Hello, Sheriff. Thanks for joining us to discuss the incident with Kenneth Terry. Why don't you begin by telling us about the April 2004 incident?
Well, in April of 2004, we'd received some calls through our 911 center that there was a gentleman named Kenneth Terry that was driving around the county, I think particularly in the Eden area, threatening to harm himself and others. We'd had some previous instances with him of violence where he was threatening to harm himself or others. But on this particular day, one of my lieutenants was checking the area near a graveyard just outside the city limits of Eden on 135. During the process, he spotted a vehicle matching the description of Kenneth Terry's vehicle, and when he went out to confront him, when he was starting to approach him, he said Kenneth Terry came out and presented a handgun. My deputy backed out of the situation to give him some room, contacted our 911 center and asked for additional assistance. They started talking with him and trying to communicate with him to get him to put his gun down and indicate to him that nobody wanted to hurt him, wanted to get him some help. And I actually thought he was going to work with us, but then at one point in time, like I said, it was only like a 15-minute period, I noticed that he took this pistol and either put it to his mouth or to his head area. And I thought that he, at that time, was going to shoot himself. Just a short period of time after that, he got back into his vehicle and started to drive around through the graveyard. And I indicated to the deputies that we needed to stop him if he got within about 30 yards or so of where the officers were at, to try to take his tires out and disable the vehicle. During that process, he did drive his vehicle, drive his vehicle toward the officers in their direction. Their safety was in question. Shots were fired. During the process, one round went a little bit high, struck him in the neck area, and subsequently he died from that injury.
Can you kind of talk about how that incident, and certainly afterward it was found to be justified?
Yes, sir.
By the DA's office. Can you kind of talk about how that incident affected you personally?
Like I said, every time we go into a situation, there's always that possibility that somebody may escalate. And the officers, you know, we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect the public. And we also try to protect the person we're dealing with as much as we can. But sometimes we have to use force to stop threats.
It seems like, and maybe just getting a little off subject, but people, you know, the jails have kind of become the de facto mental health, provider for a lot of folks.
You're exactly correct. You know, I mean, I look at suicide rates in our county. I look at commitments in our county. Just about every day, there's a law enforcement officer somewhere that encounters someone. Either we're involved with a mental commitment process, on an involuntary commitment process, or they deal with someone that's in need and help of some type of mental health concern. So the better we can train our officers out there in the street to recognize these situations, it helps them to better handle that person. And when I mean handle, I mean to assist that person to get them the help they need, because the last thing we want to do is take someone's life.
You talked about the training with for mental health, possibly assessments or what have you. I mean, has there been a change? You mentioned the use of force. I mean, has there been a change to how you train toward the use of force after this situation?
Well, as far as use of force as it applies to deadly force, 158-401-D2 covers the use of deadly force. That hasn't changed within the state of North Carolina. That's the guideline that all law enforcement officers are trained on. We also have a use of force standard in North Carolina in the statutes. But as far as the use of force, you know, again, with this situation, myself, the officers, I felt we were absolutely correct in the use of force. But at the end of the day, you just wish that someone hadn't lost their life.
Yeah.
I feel for the families. I feel for all persons affected.
And you had mentioned that to me yesterday when we spoke on the phone. Can you kind of talk about who is affected by situations like you ran into in April?
Well, again, our primary responsibility in law enforcement is to protect and serve the citizens in our community that we serve, and to help. You know, a long time ago when I got in law enforcement, they asked me, why do you want to get in law enforcement? Because I said I want to help people. And I've never stopped doing that for 33 years.
Do you feel like the training that you have implemented has decreased the chances that something like this will happen again?
I think that the crisis intervention training is a tool that can help to reduce the chances of taking a life, potentially taking a life, because you're understanding what's going on with that person and kind of understanding the mental psyche of that person while you're dealing with that person. And also they learn techniques. They learn some de-escalating techniques and some things that when you're observing a person in need with potential mental illnesses, it shows our deputies and our police officers how to interact with that person, not to create crisis, but to reduce crisis.